Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. So you can see I've got lots of things developing in the orchard going on right now. I've got these beautiful green apples. They may not, well, okay, beautiful may be too far of a stretch, but these apples are absolutely delicious. Oh, here's Cersei. She wants to chime in too. Hello, Cersei. She's got a toy mouse that she wants me to throw for her. But these apples, this tree is loaded with apples this year, and these make the best apple pie. They're great for eating right off the tree as well, but I also like to paint them each year. So we're going to be doing a little painting of these in just a minute. And if you're new here, please stay tuned because I have a very important announcement that I'm going to be making in a couple of minutes. And then I also wanted to show you these beauties. So these are little crab apples. They may be called lady apples. I'm not 100% sure of the variety, but they are absolutely beautiful. And so I'm going to be painting these very soon. But the reason that I wanted to share these with you today is because in the last live watercolor class at the pop-up shop, and I'll come on screen here, we were painting from these apples. And I also did a complete introduction to the color wheel. Let me make sure you can see that. And the value strip. And I also talked about various green mixtures. So I'm going to be going over some of those things again today. And the really exciting news that I have to share with you is that for the past several weeks I've been asking you to be sure that you're signed up for notes from Dandelion Cottage. Well, today is the last day to make sure that you're signed up for the big announcement for the giveaway and also for the new watercolor paint box. So I'm really excited about this. I've been working very hard on it for quite a while. And so I'm just about there. I just have a few more links to link up and some web pages to put the finishing touches on. And as soon as those things are complete, I'm going to be sending out notes, which is the email that has all the information about what's involved, what's in the kits, what the subscription is all about, and how you can get in on the free giveaway. So I'm really excited about that. Now today I'm going to be demonstrating how to paint these apples, and I'm going to be using many of the same things that you'll find in the kit. If you saw the video last week, maybe you saw the unboxing of the prototype where I talked a little bit about some of the items that you would find inside. Today I'm actually going to use them, and I really consider this a kind of a no-frills kit. These are the things that I use every single day when I paint, and I want to make sure that everybody has everything that they need so that you don't get frustrated, that you're ready to go. You don't have to think twice about all the different things. You can just watch the video tutorials at your convenience and have everything to hand so that you can have a good result. So let's get busy with the apples. I'm going to turn you down. And if you have any questions at all, please put them in the comments. I will be checking on the comments today. And if you are not subscribed to Notes from Dandelion Cottage and you're watching on Facebook, up in the banner is a button, and it says sign in or sign on. Sign up. It says sign up. So just sign up. It'll bring you to a form. It'll get you where you need to be. And then at some point tonight or early tomorrow morning, you will be getting the email with all the information that you'll need for the giveaway and everything else. So let's get busy. So the reason why I like painting apples in particular is because they're spherical in shape. And one of the fundamental lessons that I want all my students to be aware of is something called the movement of light. And the movement of light is the thing that makes it possible to be able to create the illusion of form on a two-dimensional plane. And so in this example, I've done that using just the primaries, red, yellow, and blue, okay? And so you can see over here on the side, I've got my yellow, I've got my blue, and I've mixed them together to create a green. And then I've added a little bit of the violet, which is red and blue, and that helps to make the darker tones. I go into much more about all of these different things in the lessons, so stay tuned for that. But today I'm just going to keep it simple, pertaining just to the apples. Now, here are some of the things that I'm going to be using today. So I have my travel palette. I love this travel palette. This is one that I've had forever. It goes with me everywhere. If you saw my pictures in the Grand Canyon in February, you saw me painting with this little palette. You can do just about anything that you can paint with just these colors. And so I have my primaries here, which is what I'm going to be using today. I'm just going to use a limited palette so that if you're just getting started and all you have is the yellow, red, and blue, you'll be able to follow along. And, oh, and also in the palette is my paintbrush. And so this is a travel brush, and it is a number 8, and this is very close to the same size brush that comes with the watercolor paint box starter kit. This is actually a genuine sable brush. The one that's included in the box will be a synthetic brush, because otherwise it would just be too expensive to make the starter kit reasonable. The other difference that you may see in this box is that I'm using all full pans. So that refers to the size of these containers that are holding the paint. You can also get what's called a half pan, which means that you can double the amount of spaces in your box for paint. And with the watercolor paint box, each month you're going to be getting a new color. So you will have enough room and in your box to use 12 half pans so that you can have a place for a different color that you receive each month. And then finally, of course, you have these beautiful mixing spaces, which is why I like this box, because it has double the mixing area in it. I'm just going to grab a piece of the watercolor paper Fluid 100 and check my settings, make sure that you can see me, and that looks good. And there's Della. Hi Della, thank you for tuning in, good to see you. So I'm going to begin working wet and wet, and I'm going to use my spritzer to just give my paper a light misting. I'm going to go ahead and do that on both sides. And using this plexiglass is going to keep the water that's on the paper from being absorbed into my surface here, and also it makes it very easy to move the paper around. Now I have my little turtle paperweight here. I'm going to use that to prop my board up, and that way I can, Let me arrange my apples. That way I can have the board slightly slanted, and that's going to help in the gravity pulling the water down. The last thing I have out today is my pipette, which is just a big eyedropper, and I'm just going to add a couple of drops of water to my paints because they're a little bit dried up, and we're good to go. Just moving that water around, make sure that the paper is evenly moistened. And this paper is 140-pound paper, so it's going to absorb a lot of that moisture that I spritzed on there. And as I'm talking and brushing the water around, it's getting absorbed into the core of the paper. So if you look at the sides, you can see that there's still a lot of moisture on the surface, but in just a couple of seconds, much of that is going to be absorbed into the paper itself. And it's going to leave me with a kind of a damp surface that's going to be perfect for starting my painting. And while that continues to absorb, I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to moisten this puddle of green that I already have on my palette. If you have some paint left over on your palette from a previous painting session, just leave it on there, because you can reactivate it to get it ready to go again. Off to the side I have a couple of water containers, and I also have a sponge. So I'm going to begin with this very light color green, and I'm going to start flat, I think. And I'm going to use the brush to, actually I want to show you one more thing. Before I get going, I want to show you how to mix a neutral tone. If I take a little bit of blue and a little bit of red, I can create a nice violet tone. And if I take a little bit of the yellow and mix that into it, it's going to give me a kind of a grayed neutral color. And I can make any adjustments to that I like. And if I use a brush that has plenty of water on it, I can use this color just to get my apples placed where I want them. So I can draw with my brush. And so very quickly, in just a couple of seconds, I can get my apples situated on the page. Let me make sure you can see this. Okay, there you go. And I see Beverly's here. Hi, Bev and Sandra. Well, you all found me today, even though I came on a little bit later than usual. Thank you for joining me. And if I go back into my neutral mixture here and make a slightly darker mixture, and I'm just adding pigment to so that it's more neutral, so it doesn't look like any particular color. Okay, so right now it may look a little bit violet. So if that looks a little bit violet, that tells me that I just need to add a touch more yellow, and that's going to create more of a neutral tone. So now I've got something that's a little bit darker, and I can increase the shadow. And I think you can see that I'm getting a very nice, soft diffused stroke because the paper's damp, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, particularly with my shadows. And then of course there are some little details on the apples themselves, so there's that little dimple where the stems spring from. All right, and so I think it's already starting to look like something, and I've hardly done anything. One of the wonderful things about watercolor is that you can paint very quickly, and of course it's very portable. So if you're somebody that likes to travel and bring your paints and look at the beautiful scenery and get some souvenirs, watercolors are the way to go. Now, before it dries too much, I want to make sure I get a little bit of color in here. So here's my green, and I'm just going to drop that in there like so. Okay, and then in the areas where it's lighter, I'm going to add more of this kind of a yellowish green, and I'm being careful to preserve some very light areas for my highlights. Okay, and I will continue to add a little more pigment, a little more blue to my green mixture. This is going to help me get a little bit darker. There we go. So I'm just letting the watercolor do all the work. The watercolor is just moving in that damp surface that I've created on the paper. And finally, while it's still nice and moist like this, I do see a little bit of a red blush, but in this case, it's kind of it's almost like a rusty red. And so to mix that, I'm going to warm up my red with a little bit of yellow, and then add a tiny bit of blue. And that's going to tone that red down, and that's looking pretty good, and I can start to get that here and there in these spots on the apples. Here we go. Okay, so at this stage, the paper's still very damp, and I don't want to disturb the surface of the painting. So I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I can go a little bit darker in my shadows. There we go. So your shadows are going to be darkest, closest to the object that is creating the cast shadow. So I can put these little accent points here and there. And then I'm going to check the comments. If you have any questions, now's the time, because I'm going to give this a minute to set up. So if you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And since we're live on video today, and I want this to dry a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat tool to help dry the picture. Normally I wouldn't do that. I would just let it dry naturally. But I have my heat tool here at my desk, and it has two settings. It's a little bit noisy, so I'm going to mute the sound for a second while I try to dry off this paper a tiny bit, so bear with me while I do that. Okay, I'm back. So that little bit of drying is just enough to take some of the excess moisture off the surface. The paper is still nice and damp, which I want, but because the surface is a little bit drier, now I can add some details. So one of these stems has, or one of these apples has this gorgeous stem, and it's kind of a brown color. So if I were to take some yellow and mix that with a drop of red. No, it's more than a drop of red. Let's go back and get a little more yellow. There we go. And then a tiny bit of blue. I'm going to start to get a nice warm brownish tone. Make that a little bit darker, and that's going to work just perfectly. And now I should be able to get a stroke on here. And I think you can see the difference in the hard and the soft edges. So that's very important. And that's something that I talk about a lot in the classes. But you want to be able to create a variety of brush strokes with both hard and soft edges. And the other thing I want to do is I want to put a little more detail and attention in those belly buttons on the apples. I don't know where the stem springs from. They look like belly buttons to me. And so I'm just going to put a little indication. All right, and then I can take my damp brush and just soften that edge a little bit so it blends with the surrounding area better. Just like so. And then I want to do a little sketching. It's a little too damp there, that's okay. While it's still wet, you can take advantage and continue to add more of those soft tones. And I'm just, you know, whenever you place a stroke or a color or a tone or a texture, whatever it is that you're working on, every time you add something to your picture, it's going to affect all of the other painting that you've done up till that point. And so as an artist, you're always making decisions and assessing what your painting needs. So as the picture develops here, I can look and I can say, okay, I think I need a little more red over here, maybe a little something over here, something in here. So you continue to work from the bigger, more general ideas and refine them to the more specific, and just do a lot of close observation. I always stress that it's best to work from life rather than a photograph. This is the perfect time of year for you to go out to the farm stands, the farmer's market, whatever, if you have to go to the supermarket, and just pick up some fresh produce, everything, it's the harvest time of year. And you can get these beautiful things that you can paint and have so much fun doing so. All right, so just a couple more strokes here. As you can see, I hope you can see, the strokes are getting darker, the edges are getting a little bit more defined, and you just kind of work with the natural drawing of the paper to do all of those things. Still pretty wet in there. I'm not going to be able to do too much there right now. But the picture continues to develop and develop. Now at some point, you want to put down your brush. Hopefully it'll be at a point before it's too late. And I just need to add a cast shadow on my stem here. So just got a little bit darker where that little nubbins is. And you just want to leave your picture alone and give it a minute to dry. The watercolor tends to dry a tiny bit lighter than it appears when it's wet, so you might want to come back and make some adjustments. But give it a minute, go away, rest your eyes, go have a cup of coffee, answer your email, whatever it may be. Put your picture up on a shelf across the room so that you can get a good look at it. And then if you need to come back and make any adjustments, you can do that. Now, what I'd like to do with this picture in particular is I'd like to come back and I'd like to glaze some stronger color over the apples. I think that if you see the color is on this specimen is much more vibrant, much darker, much brighter than how it appears in my painting. And so, but I don't want to disturb the layer of paint that I have on there already. So I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to put the brush down, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to glaze over the top of it to develop the color and make it much brighter. And you'll be able to see that in the thumbnail photograph that will be in the description, or the thumbnail of the video today. So I'm going to check the comments real quick and see. Beverly says she worries about the blending of colors if the paper is so wet, and that the colors will bleed. Well, but you learn. Let me get on here for a sec. So Bev, over time you learn how to control the amount of water to pigment, and that's the secret of watercolor, is how much water to use and how much pigment at any given time. And it gets tricky because as the paper is absorbed, as the water is absorbed by the paper, and depending on the atmospheric conditions in your area, whether you're in the desert, you're in Florida, it might be hot and humid, or if you're in the cool New England beach, the paint and the water is going to dry at different rates. And as you become more and more familiar with the way those things are reacting to the environment, you will learn to gauge better and better how much water to add, how little water to add. What you don't see, and I should show this to you, let me show you this real quick, is that off to the side I also have a sponge. Okay, and the sponge is what we call a thirsty sponge, so that when I put my brush in the water, I can absorb excess moisture from the brush just by touching it to the sponge. If I want to remove even more water, I can use a paper towel. Okay, so this is a very absorbent paper towel. I think everybody knows what the absorbent paper towel company is. That's what I like. And I'm just removing a lot of that moisture. Now what I have is something called a thirsty brush, and I can actually use this to lift up excess paint. Okay, so I'm sort of mopping that pigment off the surface of the paper. And the reason I'm able to do that is because this is such nice watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton. It's 140 pound, so it's a nice weight. It's got a nice surface, so it's got some tooth, a little bit of texture, which is a lot of fun. And that's something that you can do with the better paper. If you're using a paper that's not 100% cotton, and especially if you're using a paper that's not designated as watercolor paper, you could run into a lot of trouble. So what I would say, Bev, is just keep practicing. You just keep getting better at judging how much water to pigment, and after a while it becomes second nature. It'll happen automatically. You wouldn't even be thinking about it. And there's Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl. All right, well, I've got a full house of my watercolor students here today. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope that inspired you to go to the farm stand and grab some apples. And please check your email. First thing in the morning, I think you should have something. If everything goes according to plan. If not, it might be a tiny bit delayed, but be sure that you are subscribed to Notes from Dandelion Cottage. And if you have any friends that are creative, that like to paint, and are interested in learning more about watercolor, you might want to share the link with them, because this is going to be a very fun giveaway. All right, that'll do it for today. I'm back to the pop-up shop tomorrow. We've got a couple more weeks. If you are local, there is a watercolor class coming right up on Saturday, and if you go to dandelioncottagedesign.com, you will find all the information under events on how you can get signed up and register for that. I'd love to have you. There's still a couple seats left. It's about halfway full right now, and I don't have a lot of space there. It's a small room. So stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.